Okay, we're back. We're online again. We're doing a broadcast again. It's a Friday Footnote, Julie.
It's a Friday Footnote.
Wow, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time. What, like a year?
No, we were doing them earlier in this year. But yeah, it's probably not been since like April. I don't know. Maybe. This is our transitional show, I guess, because we're like between studios. But I want to say hi to everybody. Hello to our Rockfin listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody out on YouTube, on Facebook.
Yeah.
On it's going there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. On Twitter, right. So both Julie and I are on Twitter, and we're broadcasting or streaming on our Twitter accounts there. So if you have any comments, please put them in the comments on whatever platform you're watching. Looks like you're the only one watching right now.
Oh, well, it's not. Yeah. There's probably more people watching, but whatever. It'll pop on. It takes a minute.
Yeah. That's why I'm just kind of riffing here. You've been broadcasting, you've been streaming pretty regularly. I have not been on at all. And so hello everybody, nice to see you. My name is JP. I'm the other part of Book of Hours, if you don't know. If you only know Julie, I'm her significant other, otherwise known as a husband. And we got a lot of things to talk about today, as usual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like fake
everything.
I guess that's where we are right now. Like everything's fake.
Everything.
Unless you're experiencing it in person with somebody, and you may not even know if they're real. But most everybody online, you just can't trust what you see online anymore, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-mm.
Unless you really know that person, but in IRL,
right?
But,
in real life.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe we should start with the big news of the hour that just came down the pike last week about Reiner.
Oh, okay.
Reiner
Yeah, this
Fuellmich.
kind of this came out yesterday or the day before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The incident took place about a week ago.
Okay.
But the story broke a few days ago.
Ago. Can you hand me my phone? Because I kind of actually want to read this article, and I don't know, it's not that long.
Are you sharing it?
Yeah, I'm sharing it right now. So this is on Vice News. So take that with a grain of salt. We know that Vice is really compromised. So we know that this is, but the reason I want to read this to you is because I want to point out what's really going on with I'm getting rid of that ad. What's really going on
Good luck with that.
Oh, I know but it's like we've got this ad or this ad,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just pull it up there.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's the one I wanted to avoid. But anyway.
Oh yeah.
So what's going on is there's a confluence of different stories and different narratives going on, I guess is the best word. So let me read this to you. Reiner Fuellmich, Fuellmich or Fuellmich?
I don't even know.
Yeah, Fuellmich, a German lawyer who had led an international push to prosecute elites for orchestrating a fake pandemic, they put that in quotes, is accused of embezzling funds donated to his campaign. A German lawyer who spearheaded a drive to prosecute elites for orchestrating a fake pandemic, once again the quotes, has been arrested for alleged embezzlement after being deported from Mexico. Now, I want to point out that, when media outlets like this use quotation marks, this is where they're, pointing out that we don't, this is what you would call editorializing a story, because this is not a quote, right? Fake pandemic is not a quote from somebody, from what somebody said. This is them editorializing. Okay. So they don't believe in, what he's saying, so they're calling it fake. Okay, so it's their quote, but it's them editorializing. So you have to look out for these kinds of things. Okay, so he had been arrested for alleged embezzlement after being deported from Mexico. Reiner Fuellmich, 65, is accused of having embezzled hundreds of thousands of euros as managing director from the Corona Committee Foundation. Now, in this case, the quotation is giving us an actual name of a foundation. So in that case, I think it's correct, which collected substantial donations from the global COVID. Okay, now here's the the editorializing truther movement for its intended class action lawsuit against the supposed architects of the fake pandemic. The public prosecutor's office in Göttingen, Germany, said on Tuesday. Fuellmich's attempt to put people on trial was known among his supporters as the Nuremberg 2.0 campaign, likening it to the mass trial of Nazi leaders responsible for World War II. And they used a numeral, a Western numeral 2 instead of the traditional Roman numeral 2. Fuellmich had been living in Tijuana, Mexico, in a bid to evade German authorities. Now, I don't know if that's true or not.
I do. I believe it's true.
Yeah, because he was living in California in the Bay Area. But
then he went back to Germany for a while, and he worked with Vivian, his partner, on the Corona Committee. And then that whole thing fell apart in Germany.
Well, she was accusing him of
when she accused him of embezzling donations, which were meant for lawsuits, which he was using to fix up his house. She accused him of that, and his response was to call her a whiny bitch.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for that context. They had issued an arrest warrant for him in March after receiving a complaint from his former associates, the whiny bitch, that's my quotation, associates, that he had misappropriated funds donated to the Corona Committee Foundation. The Göttingen public prosecutor's office said he was deported from Mexico last week after his residence permit expired before being arrested on arrival at Frankfurt Airport. The office in Göttingen, where Fuellmich had been previously based, said its ongoing investigation into the lawyer had found evidence of significant transfers of funds from the Corona Committee Foundation's accounts into private accounts of Fuellmich and his wife. This included a payment of 200,000 euros to Fuellmich's wife in 20 different transactions in November 2020, and another alleged transaction of 500,000 euros in May of the following year. Prior to the coronavirus pandemic, Fuellmich was best known for his work in corporate fraud cases against major companies, including Volkswagen, Deutsche Bank. And in 2020, he established himself as a leading figurehead in the global COVID truther movement, speaking at conspiracy theorist events and drawing support for his pledge to investigate crimes against humanity. Again, quotations around crimes against humanity. Supposedly, there's another editorial word, supposedly committed by governments and corporations around the pandemic. And that's pretty much it. That article. And so when I say supposedly is them editorializing, usually they would say allegedly if they're, so if they're being, truthful about, or, in their reporting. So what I want to do is, it seems like there was a quote in here.
Clothing store owner in California and mother of 9 was killed by a man who made disparaging remarks about a pride flag hanging outside her shop before shooting her, San Bernardino Sheriff's Office says. Now, tributes are pouring in from the local community and loved ones, including the Lake Arrowhead LGBTQ group.
So
who
that's
described the owner of Magpie as a remarkable figure and an ally. On Friday, August 18th, officers responded to gunshots at the store and found Carlson dead on scene.
Yeah, I don't know how to get rid of it.
Okay, so let's leave this up still, because there was a little bit more, and this is where I wanted to get into. I'm
trying to get back over to here so I can look at the chat.
Okay.
And it won't let me. So
Well,
that's all I was doing, was going over here.
Okay.
But
that's weird. We're getting.
No, this is what it's been like going live lately.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. It sounds like a white hat that the Q peeps were depending on. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. and I never use those words, but I get what you're saying. Okay, all right, now we can see what we're doing. Okay, so the article goes on. I thought it got interrupted by an ad. So along with other figures from the Corona Committee, Fuellmich was also involved in a fringe anti-lockdown party called Die Basis, which won 1.4% of the party vote in Germany's 2021 federal election. Una Tits. Okay, so this is when I was reading this article to Julie yesterday. I was like, Una Tits.
Yeah,
it's
that's like supposed to be her real name.
Yeah, so it's spelled Titz. Researcher and analyst at Germany's Amadou Antonio Foundation, which monitors extremism, told Vice News that Fuellmich's campaign to prosecute elites over COVID had been losing momentum long before his arrest, as coronavirus receded as an issue, and Fuellmich waded into other conspiracist talking points, such as the war in Ukraine, and more recently, the Hamas-Israel conflict. Hamas, yeah.
Not hummus.
Hummus. The hummus. The Israeli hummus conflict. That sounds fun. Fuellmich's lawyer, Dagmar Schoen, has tried to paint his arrest as politically motivated, the politically motivated arrest of a dissident. They want to silence a spokesman for the resistance, she told a YouTuber in the aftermath of his arrest. God, they don't even say who the YouTuber was. That's so rude. Tits said this response was typical within the conspiracist scene, where brushes with the law were typically framed as persecution by the establishment. Many of Fuellmich's supporters are trying to establish a case of political injustice persecution and draw comparisons to Julian Assange, she told Vice News. It's unsurprising that a highly fraudulent milieu would rally behind him, as some of his most prominent supporters have had their own run-ins with the law. Okay, so this last part of this video, or this article, is what I really kind of wanted to focus on. Now, I looked up Ms. Una Tits on LinkedIn, and
can we show her page?
Yeah, but we have to get in there, and I may have to log in. So that would be uncool, but let's see.
Like that?
Yeah, try it.
I just thought it would be important for you to talk about what a composite is, what a persona is. Yeah. Okay.
There she is. Now she lists herself as Una T. Yeah. She lists herself as Una T. Mm-hmm. And I love her. So let's talk about this. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Share her because it's a persona.
Right. Okay. So let me go back here and then share. Oops. Share screen. And we'll find her here. Okay. Una. There you are, Una. Okay, so let's look at Una here. So look at the image. Generally, people on LinkedIn have an actual photograph that they use for their image, right? I'm over here on the right, and then you can see these people down the right-hand side. They're all photos, right? Generally, people do not use illustrations of themselves, and who knows, if this is what she actually looks like.
I don't think she's a real person.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Okay. So personas, don't have, real photos. And if they do, they're, just generic looking. We've seen this before. But then on top of it, you get this I took a screenshot of it because you can't always read the whole thing. So Una, hi, I'm Una.
Hi, I'm AI.
God, Ms. Tits. Hi, Kev. So this is really professional. This is very in keeping with LinkedIn. Anyway, hi, I'm Una, and I'm a media geek. I'm a child of my time, digital native, and way too overengaged in media outlets and trend research. I have an intricate understanding of content creation and distribution. Why? Because I believe in creating unique, tailor-made solutions in an oversaturated time. This sounds like AI.
This is AI. So
this is total AI.
Let's pause for a minute. Please tell the audience and remind us how she relates to Reiner Fuellmich's arrest.
Right. Okay. So,
which is what you were just reading.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's plenty more. That's so funny. She ends with, because after all, like Grandpappy Marshall McLuhan said,
oh my God,
it said it so well. The medium is the message. I mean, okay, so let's just throw in a cliche after all.
Yeah.
So, right. Okay. So Una is being used as a reference, as a person who is being quoted in an article. Okay. She is a source, as they call them. Now, a lot of times when media outlets don't want to, actually tell you who they're using as their source, they say sources say. But now they can produce personas pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to the organization that she is part of,
she almost looks like Helen.
I know,
a little bit.
I know.
She's got the whole dark thing going. Yeah.
The Amadou Antonio Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to their website, they don't have any of the contributors or any of the people who are the researchers. They don't have any researchers listed. Now, that's not necessarily an indication that this person is a persona, but they don't have anybody like that. They have their leadership team listed, and that's basically it. And you look through that leadership team, and there are who's who of NGO wonks and icky people who, they basically they've never had to deal with
real life,
the real world outside of maybe an upper middle class existence. The woman who's the leader of this organization, she's been doing it for like decades. And she looks really young. So it's weird. Okay. So you can go to that foundation. I don't have to bring it up. It's just another one of these NGOs that are responsible for taking away voting and participation in your government by, being part of unelected committees and being sources for media that actually are propagandizing to you. So going back to the article,
and this is the Vice article.
This is the Vice article. You don't have to bring it up necessarily, but yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the thing that I want to point out is that they're basically putting together. What's that word? It's not coming to me. Conflating.
Conflating.
Conflating different types of people into one. And they don't do it here so much, but in another article I want to show you, they really do. And so basically, she's like, the unsurprising that a highly fraudulent milieu would rally behind him, as some of his most prominent supporters have had their own run-ins with the law. Now, really? Now, that's great, because all of a sudden she says, this thing, right? This, like, who are they and what are their run-ins with the law? Did they get a traffic ticket?
Yeah,
were they
exactly
right? But
right.
What's going on here, and what you'll see in other places, is this start of this conflation of truthers, right-wing, hard right-wing individuals, political individuals, people who have been vilified in the media, and various other people. And I think it might have been in this article, it goes on saying something like, he said in a quote to what's his name, the War Room,
Steve
Bannon. I think they brought, and I didn't see that in here when I was reading it, but
I think it's this article where they talk about Steve Bannon. This
other
one,
here.
Yeah. You want to share this article?
Yeah, go ahead and share that.
I'm going to try to, push you along here.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Please do, because I'm getting a little lost in the weeds.
So what is your point?
So, okay, my point is that what they're doing is they're taking people who have had run-ins with the law. Okay, so you have Fuellmich, who's being arrested for embezzlement, combining him with the truther movement, people who are questioning narratives that are out there, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's Ukraine or the Israeli Hamas. I know. Conflict. Okay. And so anybody who's questioning mainstream narratives of any kind are now being linked to lawbreakers, far right wing extremists, and anything else you want to throw in there. People, populists, as Mike Benz uses it, but the way that they use the word populist in like, say, the World Economic Forum, is they think of them as like being strongmen and like dictators. Okay, so they use those words to conflate with populist. So my whole point is that they're also trying to take away freedom of speech through doing these kinds of things. Because if you are questioning a mainstream narrative, they're saying, well, if you're doing that and you're claiming you have freedom of speech, and I saw somewhere else in one of these articles where they were equating freedom of speech with basically breaking the law, or being a, I forget the word that they were using in one of the articles. They link it with anti-Semitic ideology and thoughts. I mean, they're accusing people of thought crime. They're linking people who are questioning narratives with pretty extreme racist groups. And so it's really disingenuous of the media out there. And so basically they're saying, you cannot have freedom of speech, but you must have correct speech. And by correct speech, it's you go along with the narratives, you condemn people who support conservative politicians of any kind, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Mm-hmm. And here they're showing us Roger Waters, who, as far as I'm concerned, he's pretty Midland and very centrist, who's questioning, who's supporting BDS, right? And now they're, and it's weird too, because on one hand, they're telling us to support the Palestinians, but yet support Israel, and yet condemning BDS. And so they're doing that kind of thing as well, where they're conflating, and they're confusing and mixing up issues deliberately to confuse the public.
I wanted to show this Hastings School, UC School of Law from winter of 2021. Just the headline here for this paper should be enough to make you stop and think. Reimagining the First Amendment. Okay. Reimagining the First Amendment. No. You don't want to reimagine free speech.
Right.
So this is what I think, this is the point that JP is trying to make, is that, if you refused to attend Thanksgiving dinner a couple of years ago because your family was either making you take a test or making you show proof of a vaccine in order to have turkey dinner, now, because of the media and because of these academic institutions, which are basically just government cutouts or CIA cutouts, as we've learned from Mike Benz, now your family is being programmed to think of you as a J6er, like a lumping you in. Yeah. Like it's a very like sort of reduced way of thinking. Like, oh, look, my nephew, my son, who refuses to get a COVID shot, or who refuses to show his concern for the family by at least, getting a COVID test to attend this birthday dinner, he's the same as those J6ers. Mm-hmm. And so those two articles that we showed you earlier talk a little bit about that. And they basically say, if you don't want a biological weapons program inserted into your body, then you're the equivalent of a domestic terrorist, mm-hmm. is ultimately what they're saying.
Right.
And so now you've got Hastings Communication and Entertainment Law Journal, which is with the University of California at San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's the School of Law. It's where everybody goes to get their Juris Doctorate, right? Their JD, which is their law degree. This is where people go to learn the law, and they're reading these types of articles from the Law Journal, which are, thank goodness, are still made public, that talk about how we need to reimagine the First Amendment. What the heck? You don't want to reimagine the First Amendment. So this is kind of where we are right now. And so I thought, I would try to tie up what JP was saying. And that's another thing too, is that all of your, friends and family and coworkers and friends who follow particular narratives, whether those narratives are about, war between Russia and Ukraine, or war between Hamas and Israel, or whether it's, the pharmaceutical companies benevolently, creating vaccines for the health and well-being of United States citizens or the global domestic population. If you don't fall in line with these narratives, then you're considered QAnon, like a QAnon conspiracy theorist. And I don't know how far a lot of people have gone to really be transparent about their belief systems with their families or with their friends. But one of the things that I cautioned from the very beginning was you can hold your own. You can stay true to yourself and stay true to your own personal values, but you don't have to announce it all over the internet. You don't have to announce it to anybody who will listen. You don't need a group of people to really, be your tribe. You're fine just living your life the way you live it, because the last thing you want to do is bring undue attention to yourself, because we're getting into some dangerous territory now. And I think that the whole thing with the arrest of Reiner Fuellmich, which I believe is 95% because of the fact that he embezzled money. Okay, that's why he got arrested, because he was committing fraud.
Right.
Okay.
But they conflate it with
QAnon and conspiracy theorists
and J6.
and J6ers who are creating, domestic terrorism on the U.S. Capitol. So they're conflating anybody who was supporting Reiner's message as those people. So that's what we want to do is first of all, we don't even think that Reiner Fuellmich, personally on this platform, we don't even think that he's like who he claims. And I think this was pretty obvious from the get-go when he was receiving millions of dollars in funding, and yet no lawsuits were ever filed. It cost thousands of dollars to file the very lawsuits that he claimed he was going to file on behalf of the global domestic population. And he never did.
Right,
and
no.
So other people were starting to question his true values. They were starting to question what his motivation was. And then the next thing you know, Vivian turns around and accuses him of fraud. But we think that he is being used as a message to the rest of us. Like, we can all be Reiner Fuellmiches now.
Right.
I don't have any love for the guy. In fact, I doubt he's sitting in a prison cell right now. I doubt he's in jail right now. I believe that that's just a story that we're told, but I do believe that there is some legal precedence to hold him because of the fraud he committed.
Yeah. Right. And, oh boy, I just lost my train of thought. Along those same lines. And wow, I feel like an inarticulate
I've been doing this. I've been practicing.
Right, candidate for the Miss America contest.
So seriously, like
So
5 minutes before we
geography is important to people because they need to learn. Everybody should have maps in their house because geography is so important. And
So he's trying to be the nerdy professor, but literally like 5 minutes before we went online, I was looking at children's toys for trick-or-treaters. Like I wasn't even like, you know.
I know. Well, we were talking about this a lot this morning and yesterday, and you know, I pretty much was kind of on fire with it. And
well, we're always better in the morning.
We're always better in the morning,
yeah.
but we've been busy in the morning. So, and
just busy all the time.
Yeah. And we're, you know, like I said, we're in transition between two studios, but yeah. So I forget what I was actually going to go in on the next, but basically I want to come back to, that, you know, we were talking about personas, and I don't think that Fuellmich is necessarily a persona.
He's not, no.
But you know, the people, there's a lot of people I think that have been we've been told that there are people in prison because of J6, and I think a good majority of them are personas. There are probably some real people that got caught up in all that, but I think these things get fabricated for both sides of the narratives that are going on for us to consume. I remember after the Las Vegas shootings, there was a whole web page on the National Propaganda Radio website of these people, and their bios were just like, you couldn't have more saccharine bios, and they were just generic looking people, and they could be, you know, anybody USA, and yet you know, they were being lifted up as these victims of this violence to support the narrative of what took place that day. So I think that we see this over and over again, and we have to be mindful of the media that we're consuming. I don't want everybody to think everything is fake necessarily, although I tend to, but I do want you to filter your media intake and look for key things like, you know, the quotation marks around words that aren't necessarily quotes, or titles, or, you know, organizations. Look for content that's being left out, or content that's being put in that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the point that the article is trying to make. Mm-hmm. Okay. And look for people who are supposed to be experts, or a source that's giving you a quote about, you know, a given topic, and look them up. See if you know, I did a search on Uma Tits, and I couldn't find anything except her quotes. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I went to LinkedIn, because I couldn't even find the LinkedIn profile when I did a search on her in Google. And
can you go into a little more detail what a persona is?
Persona?
Yeah, because you make them.
Yeah, I know. I write personas sometimes. So in the work that I do to create like online applications, we create a set of personas that would be like the ideal user of a product, and that person would, you know, have a certain job title. They'd have certain day-to-day tasks. There would be pain points around, you know, what they have to do every day. We might even go so far as to name where they live, and if they're married or not, and if they own a home. You know, that's pretty extensive. We don't always do that. But a persona is basically a non-person, and they're used for marketing, to understand maybe a marketing demographic of a particular kind. You create these things so that it's basically a model of a person that you want to reach. And in this case, these personas are models of people who are said to be experts, or they're victims, or they're somebody that they can use in the media. They come up with an image, a photo or an image of the person. They develop a fake bio and an age, and you put them into a demographic. And especially if you're trying to reach a specific type of demographic in the media that you're creating, then you match that demographic to that persona. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that you know are done to feed you propaganda, to like support that and bring it to you in a way that you can understand it or feel, you know, part of, right? So
Right. So that takes me to this idea that personas are used to help users identify, with one another. So persona literature, which has rich content. I'm reading an abstract from a page from researchgate.net. So persona literature, which has rich content, has long been one of the dominant and popular topics in design. In the literature, which focuses on persona production and its use in the design process, there are hardly any ethical discussions about the philosophical principles of persona production. So I think what like as a UX designer, I think what JP tries to do is create these personas so that he can empathize with what actual users might be experiencing as they navigate through the various platforms. So like as you're navigating through your social media page, or as you're navigating through a website that you tend to go to a lot, or whatever, the person who's designing that navigation process has already inserted himself or herself into like where you might click next. That's part of the empathy driven aspect of like UX design. So if you think of empathy as the key foundational point of which personas are created. So we talked about how this character, Uma Tits, was part of this, organization, that ultimately what this organization does, this non-governmental organization or this NGO, ultimately what it does is it basically does a generalized sweep. Everybody who's ever talked out against a prevailing narrative is now a J6er. It doesn't even matter if I've never even been to the Capitol in my whole life. But I guess now I'm considered a J6er because, I don't like to wear a mask. You know what I mean? So this Una Tits person is a person who's part of that NGO, but she's not a real person. She's a persona, but she was just quoted in a Vice article to give her to make her seem real, to give her some sort of value, legitimacy.
Right.
So what is happening? And again, this is all coming from an emotional place, and everything that you're seeing on social media regarding these wars and stuff, sometimes they're real, sometimes they're staged with like lighting and fake blood and camera crews, and sometimes they're just personas created by AI. And so that's where I'm trying to take you. I'm trying to lead you from one thought process to the next.
Right.
Do you want to show the picture
of
the winged
the
winged babies?
Right, exactly.
So you go down here.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've done this.
Yeah, I can do it. I mean,
I got it.
So it's the image.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we just came across this, or Julie came across this last night, and just about fell out of her seat.
Yeah, this is
so gross.
Yeah, this is really disgusting. This is AI. This is not this isn't an artist creating something. This is totally artificial intelligence created. And this is part of a narrative that has already been debunked, from what I understand. And, and what this is doing is it's using this persona, this image of these Gazan children, with wings on as if they're little angels. What it's doing is it's co-opting your emotions. It's co-opting your sense of empathy and your sense of concern for what's happening in the Middle East, which is a very real concern. And it's good that you have that concern, because it confirms that you're still a human being caring about what's going on in the world. But it's co-opting that care. It's co-opting that human element of yourself and putting it towards something that, isn't even real.
Right. Now, something that you brought up when you were talking about this image last night is that what these things are doing, these narratives, but especially images like this that, might be used in a meme and that sort of thing, is that it takes away your attention and your concern for actual events that are taking place. And one of those things you mentioned was the idea that it's taking away from the deaths that are actually occurring from the vaccines, well, the shots. I hate to call them vaccines because they're not. That's just the word that everybody uses. So we sometimes have to use it. But these COVID shots that have been distributed since 2021, and the deaths and the injuries that have taken place are not being paid attention to. In fact, if anything, if you say that they're happening, you're called a conspiracy theorist. Right. And you're a J6er.
Right.
And so it's not only taking away your concern about that issue, but it's also taking away any sort of idea that, real people have been actually injured or hurt or killed as a result of these other actions that are taking place. So, it's our belief that this war is basically set up to distract us from a number of operations that are taking place. But go on.
Exactly. Why can't you take, this picture and redirect your emotions into this, into what you're seeing here? Spontaneous abortion is just another word for a miscarriage following COVID-19 vaccination pregnancies. And what sort of, website am I on? Oh, I'm on the JAMA website, which it took me zero time to find it.
What is JAMA?
JAMA. It's I've totally lost my train of thought, but it's the most, it's where everybody would go for medical concerns.
Medical news.
Yeah. So sorry. It is the it's JAMA. It's the Journal of Medical Research.
Okay.
Right. It's
okay. So it's
where doctors would go.
Right. So it's very well known as a conspiracy source, right?
No, just the opposite.
I know. Right. So
sorry, I've totally lost my Journal of the American Medical Association. Okay. So that's JAMA.
Yeah, they're well known as conspiracists.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm asking is, why does our interest have to go here, which almost seems cartoonish and childlike, when we have the receipts, as they say, we have the facts. We know for sure that, individuals across global domestic populations are unable to work because of injury due to a health program that was mandated by their government, whether that government is in the United States or outside of the United States. Right. So I just I'm not undermining what's happening in the Middle East. I'm not undermining what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. I'm basically saying that we have a domestic global population that has been targeted by pharmaceutical companies with the support and, methodology that is similar to a military tactic. So why aren't we continuing to talk about that? I recently made a comment that, some of the most, intelligent and practical and just really intelligent people that I've ever come across on social media they've turned their minds to mush over images like this. Right. Yeah. As opposed to staying focused.
Right. Well, this is clearly meant to manipulate this image of the Palestinian babies, right? And it brings to mind the whole story around the beheaded babies, right? And then that video that was going around of the children in cages, right? And a lot of times these videos are from another period of time, and they're usually the opposite of what the story is being told, right? So they'll use footage and they'll use imagery that's from other contexts, and then in this case, they will use deliberately manipulative imagery in order to propagandize you. I think the most important thing to come out of this, what we're trying to say is something that I often say is, it doesn't matter what is actually going on. It doesn't matter what Reiner Fuellmich actually did. It doesn't matter what is actually taking place. What matters is what you are being told about what is going on. Okay? We are all being propagandized to 24/7, 365 about what is taking place in the world. We have no way of knowing what is actually taking place in Israel and Gaza. We have no actual way of knowing what's going on in the Ukraine. We have no actual ability to know what's taking place anywhere unless we are living it and we are seeing it firsthand.
Right. So that's really the only thing that you know for sure is what's happening in your own life. And I think one of the things too, though, that does really frustrate me is that because we are all human beings living in our place of empathy, and we want to really, reach out across, beyond our borders and show support and care and concern for innocent people, it's difficult because those people have lived a certain way like their entire lives. And so what could be possibly appalling to you is just normal life for them.
Right. I think context is really important.
Context is really important. And you just don't know for sure what's happening. What if you want to talk about, I've talked about this before on an audio broadcast that got interrupted, and I tried to make it as clear as I could that I think that what's happening in specifically in the Gaza Strip in North Gaza is that there's a few different interested parties in turning the port cities in Israel, which sit on the Mediterranean Sea. Should we just pull up the map?
Yeah.
Let's pull up a map so people can see. Sometimes it helps to see a visual. And I did show the visual before when I was doing a broadcast before, but we have a different audience today, so maybe maybe we can show it now.
Okay.
Let's go down. Let's make it a little bit smaller so we can see the Gaza.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay, let me pull up this map. All right, so you guys can see that I've shown this before. So for you regulars that tune in frequently to me, this will look familiar to you. So you'll see up here.
In the upper.
Up here is Haifa. So Haifa has a port, and Haifa is a beautiful city. It reminds me of San Francisco. I was looking at pictures of it. It's a gorgeous Mediterranean city. It's very hilly. It looks out over the Mediterranean, and this is the Mediterranean right here. But there's a port in Haifa that has been purchased for $1.2 billion by the Adani Group, which is India. That port has been purchased by India, but is managed and operated by SIPG, which is Shanghai International Port Group.
Something like that. Yeah.
So it's managed and operated
by a Chinese company.
By a Chinese tech company.
Yeah.
And in this port in Haifa here, there's only about 100 people that actually work at the port. And then it's boasting that it's putting in around 25 vessels either a minute or an hour, which is making it so that they're getting about 1 million vessels a year through this little port in this beautiful Mediterranean coastal city in Israel. So they have talked openly about how they want to expand all the way down here through Netanyahu, through Netanya, I guess, through Tel Aviv, Yaffo, through all these places, all the way down to the Gaza Strip. And so this little strip here is where is basically like an open air prison for Palestinians, I guess. And so what they want to do is they want to move the northern Palestinians, you've been told, they need to move from the northern Gaza Strip down to the southern Gaza Strip, which then is closer to Egypt, which is basically like, I'm being Switzerland about this. I don't want to get involved in your shit. Let's see how this works out. So, but India and China, their industries, their technology industries, their port industries, their trade industries have shown a lot of interest in expanding along this coastal line right here. And I'll show you why. If I pull this out a little bit more, it takes you over to Greece. It takes you to Italy, which then is Europe. So it can give this little area right here in the Mediterranean Sea will give these port cities, which China and India want to expand to, will give them all this opportunity to open trade in the Mediterranean Sea and get out to, other parts of the world, right? So one of the things that JP and I talked about was how the Indian group called Adani took a $3.5 billion loan. And we're thinking $3.5 million, that's not a lot of money. And yet there were about a dozen.
There are
10 World Bank institutions. So
not World Bank, but international
banks that were a part of this process. So what in the world is going on? So you can see, I've not mentioned anything about war. I've not mentioned anything about, babies blowing up. I've not mentioned anything about Netanyahu being a tyrant or Hamas, nothing about that. I feel that story is a cover for this business deal with trade and, who's going to control the waterways in the Mediterranean Sea? Is it going to be India? Is it going to be China? Is it going to even be Iran, who's also, part of this in this mix? So what we're looking at is a business arrangement.
Right.
Okay. And in order to make a business arrangement work for people who may be losing billions of dollars in revenue through these business arrangements, in order to make the people okay with this business arrangement, why not start a propaganda war? Why not create personas? Why not create, emotional stories about, dead babies to get people to forget about the fact that there's a business deal going on.
Right. So I think what I'd like to kind of tie it up a little bit is that you mentioned the banks and you mentioned the port being, run by a Chinese company since like 2021, right? And now owned by an Indian company. This Indian company traditionally did not own property. They are a company that was about investments, consulting, and lately they've been buying, they basically are the largest concrete manufacturer in the world, or one of them, because they've been buying up concrete companies in India. And now they own this port city. Now, it feels to me like they've been sort of brought in to run or to own this property and work collaboratively with the Chinese company in order to, do what it is that whoever's running this show wants them to do. Something else I want to point out is that the Chinese company that is managing this port has basically reduced the number of people who work at the port down to about maybe 100 people. They're running it very efficiently and using technology to do it. So this now takes jobs out of the local market. The local people who live in Haifa, who may have traditionally worked that port, no longer have the same jobs that they had before. So once again, it's about taking money out of a local economy and putting it in the pockets of the billionaire class and the international corporations who siphon money away from local economies all over the world. The other thing that you want to pay attention to is, like Julie was saying, like, why is it that they needed to clear people out of northern Gaza, yeah, okay, it makes, if you say, oh, well, it gets them closer to Egypt and yada yada. Why would you need to clear out one half of a region that's like the most populous of region in like the world, the most like densely populated region in the world, move those people out of there into another area to make that area even more crowded? Why would you do that? Well, it's mainly, I think if you think of it in terms of, real estate acquisition and this taking place in, different parts of the world along the coastlines everywhere. If you think of Hawaii, if you think of California and the things that are going on there, if you think of like New York City and the East Coast of the United States, if you think about, Israel now and these other places that are in coastal cities, it sounds to me like this is real estate acquisition that's being the real estate acquisition that's being covered up by other things going on. We had riots in Seattle, and we had fires in California, and we have fires in other parts of the world where I believe that, these things are being done to clear people out in order for other entities to move in. And I think that also, if you think about like this idea of this Indian company buying up all these concrete companies, and one of the things that are in their portfolio are management of infrastructure projects, and knowing that China is big on managing infrastructure projects. And then if you think about the Biden's infrastructure bill, and then extend that into knowing the knowledge that for the last 20 years, the media has been talking about how the infrastructure of sewer lines and sewers in cities across the United States are aging out. They're centuries old, or they're a century old or more now at this point, and they need to be replaced. And the United States hasn't been doing anything to do that except for this bill that's just recently come up. We don't know necessarily what's in it, but I can guarantee you that it's not necessarily going to give a lot of Americans jobs, but it will be managed most likely by foreign national corporations or international corporations from other countries like China, like India, that will supply the materials to make the project happen, to manage the project, and make sure that it runs properly, and et cetera, et cetera. And the problem with that is that nobody in the United States makes any money from that. Not employers, not employees, not workers, not anybody really. And how do we know how well these things are being put together if they're being put together by contractors from international corporations? So I guess what I'm trying to say is what's been done around the world by United States companies like Bechtel and Boeing and all this thing are now being done to us. So foreign nationally owned companies are now doing things to other country or to our country what we've been doing to the rest of the world for decades. And I'm not saying that this is a comeuppance, and I'm not saying that this is right. I'm actually questioning that this is a good thing at all.
Right. Let's take a look at what Mr. Bonner quoted or commented on our podcast. He said, "Do you have any reaction to Arkansas governor and district attorney disallowing the Chinese company Syngenta from owning farmland in Arkansas?" That's a good question. So while JP was talking, I looked it up, and it looks right here, according to this site called KARK, which it looks like it's an affiliate with NBC.
Yeah, probably in Arkansas.
It says Chinese state-owned company is ordered to divest Arkansas agricultural land under the new state law. So this came out. This just came out a couple of days ago. So a company has been ordered to divest its Arkansas land following a state law passed in the last legislative session banning prohibited foreign parties from owning agriculture. And I do believe the same thing is happening in Mississippi.
Yeah, Mississippi is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about this a little bit. I won't give an opinion necessarily, but knowing that, there are lots of things going on in different companies or different states. We talked about New Mexico. We've talked about a couple other states where Chinese interests, or even the state of China, right? Not the United States state, are basically coming in and buying up property, whether it's buildings or it's agricultural land.
Right. So right here, it says that Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who's the governor of Arkansas, and the Department of Agriculture, Secretary Westward, spoke on the importance of agricultural land in Arkansas. The governor said foreign enemy countries, specifically China, are targeting the industry, putting farmers at risk. And so the name of the company is called Syngenta Seeds. And it takes up 160 acres in northeast Arkansas, used mainly for seed research. So Chinese-owned state corporations filter technology back to their homeland, stealing American research and telling our enemies how to target American farms. You know what this is, Richard? I want to thank you for sharing this with us, or bringing this up. You know what this is? This is a tell. If you're at all paying attention to signals and symbolism, this is a tell. Right here, this comment right here is a tell. Chinese-owned state corporations filter that technology back to their homeland. One of the things that Hunter Biden has been found guilty of, as at least in the court of public opinion, because there's proof of this, is that he sold American military technology to the Chinese right under our noses with our tax dollars. Okay, so this is a mainstream article. This is a mainstream article about farmland, but it also gives you a little hint right there. They say, I'll read it again. Chinese-owned state corporations filter that technology back to their homeland, stealing American research. If you take the word seed and agriculture and farmland out of it, that statement right there stands right on its own, and that's your signal. You have to pay attention to the signal through the noise. There's a lot of noise going on, and a lot of people are reacting to noise, but they're not paying attention to the signal. Not every mainstream article is out to get you. Not every mainstream article is out to lie to you. This tiny little outfit, KARK, is telling you the truth. And maybe they're using the front cover of agriculture and farmland, but they're telling you that American technology has been sold to the Chinese. Well, what kind of technology? Weapons programs, biological technology. So weapons, military programs, biological programs, that's called vaccines, which we're all very upset about. And now they're stealing American technology for seeds and for farmland. So There's a bigger story here. Pay attention to the signal through the noise.
I think also, that last little bit there on how to target American farmers, I think that's also an important statement. But I think ultimately, what you also want to look at is how is it that a Chinese company can now take away farmland that's basically, generally used to grow food, right? Or cotton, or other types of things. But you think of farmland and agriculture as mostly being for growing crops that are used for food. So that's basically a foreign national company taking food out of the mouths of Americans, right?
Basically, yeah.
So
taking a lot of things out of the mouths of Americans, JP. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah, but I think food is really important there. And that's something that they didn't mention, but I think that it's probably almost as, if not more important than what they were saying.
Right. So one of the things that one of the things that we've done on this platform is, not a lot, because we're in the middle of a big move across the country. So there hasn't been a whole lot of time dedicated to the platform. But we do still pay attention, and we pay attention to the people that seem to be cutting through the noise, and they understand the signals, and they've got all the proof and everything behind it to show you who the players are and to help you think, not tell you what to think, but to help you think and come to your own conclusions. And right now I'm working on a video essay, or not a video essay, but a video sketchbook, where I'm going to compile everything that he says, and then I'm going to weave in, some other things about him, which are really interesting and charming, and, present it to you in the same way that I made the video, Catherine Watt in her own words, which has 50,000 views. This is an individual that we've been paying attention to for a while now.
Yeah.
And we've shared his work on our platforms, and I'm constantly retweeting him. I've pared it down to basically I'm just listening to him and Scott Adams. Like, that's it. That's all I pay attention to these days.
Okay.
And plus I pay attention to my own intuition.
Sure.
I don't need other people to tell me what to,
it's
what
funny,
to believe.
It's funny when you'll bring something up, like that's a story that's out there. And one of us will then go that next step and find an article about the situation. Like you sent me that article about Reiner Fuellmich, right? And then I started reading it, and then that persona's name caught my attention.
Right.
And I started following that. And so, learning how to pick up certain cues and understanding how to, further that research, which has become a bad word, actually.
It has. It's
you're not
our word.
You're not supposed to do your own research, right? You're supposed to just take things at face value. So do your own research. But following these things down and then starting to make these connections, is I think what any real reporter would do before.
Yeah.
Before. They don't do that now. They don't do that. They don't do it now. They just take those scripts from the states. State, departments or whatever the word I'm trying to find, media departments to, leak out information to the media outlets, and they expect them to just, repeat it verbatim. So real reporting doesn't really take place anymore. I don't know if it ever really did. But were you going to play this little bit?
Yeah, we can play a little bit of it, and then we'll come back on and wrap it up.
Okay. All right.
So this is Mike Benz. This is his most recent live stream on Twitter. So what Mike Benz does is he goes onto his Twitter page, and he usually does like a 3-minute to 8-minute talk about foreign policy and how the establishment is sort of manipulating everybody. So let's go ahead and just play this. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'll just play it, and then we'll come back.
Okay, great.
The Atlantic Council is not just a think tank. They have 7 CIA directors currently serving on their board. They are basically a barometer for the intelligence community. They're funded by 4 different branches of the Defense Department: Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force. They're also funded by the State Department, and they're funded by CIA cutouts like the National Endowment for Democracy. It is basically just an outside CIA, and they were the cheerleaders of this Grand Ukraine energy play. And they had, again, this formal partnership agreement with Burisma. They were put in charge of internet censorship for the 2020 election. Okay, they were one of the 4 entities that were partnered with the Department of Homeland Security to censor your opinions about mail-in ballots. 22 million tweets. They co-labeled misinformation just for questioning the efficacy of mail-in ballots. And then they ran the whole playbook back to censor COVID-19. So this is a NATO CIA cutout who is invested in Burisma, who is an apex predator of internet censorship. With Hunter on the board of that, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then beyond that, Hunter as part of the board of advisors for the chairman's committee for the National Democratic Institute, which is the DNC spinoff of the CIA cutout known as the National Endowment for Democracy. And you have basically a national security state battering ram for the private interests of the Biden family. And I should also say the extended Biden family, which is basically all of these military, finance, and energy stakeholders who've been backing the Biden family for, at this point, basically 1.5 generations. So that's the Ukraine scandal going on. On the China scandal, you have Hunter busted in 4K HD with personal financial investments with CEFC Energy, China, this Chinese energy company, that he was texting his own family that he was co-partnered with the head of Chinese intelligence for it. Meanwhile, China is, signed this $400 billion deal to get the natural gas and the oil of Iran, and the Atlantic Council in the Biden world has this big Iran energy play to free up Iran's oil, which I talked about before. Is they sit on the world's third largest reserves of oil and the world's second largest reserves of natural gas. Hunter Biden's whole bagman deal was around the LNG gas market. So they're prying open Iran. They're using China as the proxy for that. That is, China is evading U.S. sanctions on Iran. And then the Biden family is personally, through Hunter Biden himself, who said he kicks 10% up to the big guy and told his sister that half of his paycheck goes to his dad, meaning the current president of the United States. And he's literally he sold out American policy on Ukraine for personal profit on the Grand Ukraine energy play. He sold out American interests on China for personal profit from this Iran thing. And this is a story that Natalie Winters broke this morning. I think she was the original source of this on War Room, that it turns out that this same exact company, the China CEFC, this exact company that Hunter was partnered with, was the one who was brokering the Iran oil deals. It's exactly what I called 2 weeks ago as a hypothetical speculation of the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario confirmed. So you got that, and then you got a third one, which is the Mexico policy. War Room today also broke that Hunter, it turns out, has this 8.25% interest in something called E Plata, which is partnered with the Mexican government to provide banking services for illegal immigrants coming over the southern border. The Biden administration just threatened a week ago banks with DOJ action if they denied banking services to these illegal immigrants. So you have, once again, a private financial deal of the Biden family, the foreign policy of the White House being linearly directed to maximize the profit of that private deal that the first family has. And then you have threats to the private sector that if they don't basically pay off the private company that the Biden family is a part of, then they're going to get the friggin' elbow of the entire Department of Justice rammed down their throat. I mean, this is the sort of third world dystopic broken government crap that you would expect maybe in a third world country or some insanely corrupt Gulf, Emiri situation. There's nothing like that I've ever seen in this country. If you remember, they almost tried to impeach Trump for emoluments. This idea that because he had hotels around the world that some foreign dignitaries were staying in, that compromised him. Look this up. Norm Eisen was running this scam, the emoluments scam. You have the world's most insane situation right now, the exact thing that our founding fathers warned about entanglements with foreign countries, except it's not even at the national level. It's literally localized to the Biden family itself. I've never seen a crime family situation like this in politics. Frankly, this is completely unprecedented. And if the House does not leap into action immediately on this stuff, there's not a whole lot of hope left.
Okay. So, okay. Thoughts?
So we're basically run by a crime syndicate,
right?
And probably one of the worst crime syndicates that's ever held, the highest office in the country, right?
Yeah.
I would say even worse than the Kennedys. The Kennedys were, in bed with the mob, right?
Yeah.
So this is even worse than that. I would say.
Yeah, I would say so too. But the thing that kills me is he still expects the system that has basically allowed this to take place to fix it.
Oh, who Vance?
Yeah,
Vance does.
yeah, because he thinks the Senate is going to like do something about this, and it's like I don't see why it would.
Well, you have to understand his background. You know, he had a little bit of time in the White House, and so and Naomi Wolf is the same way. She was a consultant to, and I think once you're there and in the system, obviously, or in the system, that's what people say when they've gone to prison,
right?
Once you're there and you've actually been employed by the United States government, or at least been contracted as a consultant, then it's really difficult to disentangle yourself from this ideology that the very thing that is the problem with us and with the situation is the very thing that's going to fix it.
Right.
And I think most of the American domestic population is fully on board with the same opinion we have, which is that you have to operate outside of the system.
Yeah.
Like you don't vote. You don't involve. You just, anytime someone, starts talking about, wars, which are acting as cover for, for this corruption that Ben's just described, this fucking crime syndicate that's running our country, and someone else tries to talk to you about, these wars in these other countries, and you just know that the propaganda around the story of war is to cover for the fact that your president is a goddamn, mob boss,
right?
And it's just a cover for it. And so instead of getting into these weird arguments where you're dealing with people who have the intellect of 3-year-olds, you just walk away. And that's what I do a lot. I just work around. I just do workarounds. Work around the conversations, work around the system. You just don't engage.
Well, I think David Graeber said it once, where he talked about carving something new out of the shell of the old, but in the same breath, I think he was talking about people that he'd met all over the country, and I think this is more true than we think. Is that he's an anarchist, and he said he meets people all over the country, or he used to, because he's no longer with us, who he considered anarchists with a small a, not ideological, anarchists with a capital A, but people who believe in those sorts of, ideas of autonomy and freedom, and approach their lives as an anarchist without actually having that ideological,
or without having that label,
not
even understanding, most people are just too busy. Most people are working a lot of jobs, or they're very sick. I think the new narrative now, it used to be the new narrative, the old narrative used to be, look, individuals have to work 2, 3, 4 jobs, and they just don't have time to really research who their candidates are and really get involved in politics, when they're literally just trying to pay their mortgage and put their kids through, soccer practice and dance lessons. And they're just trying to give their kids and their own lives, this idealized American lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Now the new narrative is everyone's sick.
Yes.
People are just too sick and are constantly enslaved to the medical industrial complex, who allegedly is trying to fix them from the very thing that they did to them. So they're too sick and too tired and too ill and too stressed out because of being sick to engage in the
political process,
and to engage in the political process.
Right.
So people are falling off for all sorts of different reasons.
And yet, despite that, we have even more power grabs and blatant criminal activities by the ruling class. Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
This idea that the ruling class can just blatantly go out and pillage economies and
strike deals
with other
countries on the American taxpayer dime,
which actually sell out American people, as well as give away technology that was developed here that allegedly is supposed to protect us
giving
from
it
those
away
foreign
to our
national
existential enemy.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think we're over here basically we have an incredibly unpopular view about what is being promoted as some sort of Middle Eastern conflict,
Right.
I'm sure that we've lost friends. I'm sure we've lost connections. I'm sure but we really do believe that I don't know, I can't speak for JP, but I believe that much of what we're seeing in, the Middle East right now and the reports and all this are almost fabricated in order to cover up for the fact that, Biden is a criminal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a crime syndicate. It's not a presidential family. It's a crime syndicate.
Well, and I think that I believe along the same.
Hunter is at the
center of it.
Yeah.
I believe similar along the same lines as you do. I don't believe that what we're hearing is going on is actually taking place. And I believe that it's a cover for what you just talked about, but also the takeover of the world by the Chinese state.
Probably, and just
right?
think of it. But it's not going to be, bombs dropping in your living room. It's going to be soft power. And if you don't understand what soft power is what we experienced with COVID. COVID was the test for soft power, for more soft power moves against the American domestic population, where it wasn't the army sticking a gun to your back and forcing you to get a COVID shot. It was your employer who's like, look, I just want to pay you your paycheck. Just go get your COVID shot so that we can wrap this up and you can continue your job. Everything will be okay. That's soft power. Or your grandma. Oh, but I'm sick now. I've got cold or I've got shingles. You don't want me to get sicker now, do you, sonny boy? You better go get your shot. Where you use your family to pressure you and use guilt.
Right. So it's coercion.
It's coercion, but it's soft coercion. That's what soft power is. That's how the domestic population in China is governed. They're governed through like gossip and through marginalization or wanting to be part of a clique or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think
that's how they're governed.
Internationally, the Belt and Road operation, I forget what they call it, the Belt and Road Initiative. Yeah, thank you. Is basically that, we can give you these things as long as you play, ball with us.
Mm-hmm.
You will not have to owe us a lot of money at the end, like the World Bank does to you. So this is what the United States has been doing to countries all around the world for decades, using the World Bank as a means of siphoning billions of dollars from the economies of these countries through debt. Instead, the debt is being paid back in different ways through ownership of land or through having the national, the individuals of that nationality go and relocate to other countries to work in the locations that these Chinese companies have in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's through coercive measures via kind of mob-like measure or mob-like behavior in order to gain influence throughout the world. And that influence is not nice. It's not benevolent. It's coercive, and it's just as dangerous or nasty and just as imperialist as what's been going on with the United States and European countries for the last century.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So fuck the Chinese state.
Well, fuck all states, right?
Fuck all states.
Yeah. I mean, honestly. So, so I'm working on this. I'm going to be compiling Mike Benz's clips that he puts on Twitter. I refuse to call it X.
Well,
now.
Well, you can still call it Twitter, even though it's on the X platform. Twitter is a sub brand of X, so I mean, you can still call it Twitter.
Yeah. So he uses his Twitter page to, put the pieces of the puzzle together. And so what I want to do is put it all together in a video format with some typewritten statements, some pointed statements over it, so that it acts like a textbook, so that it's something that you can refer to for information, and which is what I did with Catherine Watt in her own words. And as a result, that got 50,000 views, so I would like to, and I would also like to remind you that we live in an age of censorship, and we are probably the only platform that can truly, give testament to that in a very real way. I mean, you've got Mike Benz, who has basically created an organization about, bringing back freedom online and fighting censorship. And so he's got, 115,000 or 130,000 followers on Twitter. I have 1,800. And yet I have a video that I made that has 50,000 views. So what does that tell you about us?
And it's probably had more views than that. YouTube lies to us about the viewership
Everything.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and they'll go after us for things that are innocuous and
Totally
dumb that other
innocuous.
people get away with.
Right. And then Scott Adams too has millions of followers, and his audio has been disrupted lately. But I noticed that when you go back and listen to his broadcast after he closes them out, and you go back and listen to it, when it's just living on this platform, the audio is fine. It's fixed. So I was constantly, letting people know that sometimes these technology glitches are just technology. It's, there is no conspiracy about,
Well, or it's they're messing with the live
they're
live
messing
stream.
with the
they,
live
They do
feed.
that to us all the time. I've noticed that with your live streams.
I know, right?
So YouTube or Facebook especially will fuck with your live stream, but it'll be fine afterwards.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I hope that, I can get this done in the next week or so. I want to try to get it done before the end of the month. At least create one thing, because we've been in the middle of moving, and it's been a really intense move, the most intense move of our lives. And we're managing 2 households from thousands of miles apart. So it's been really challenging to focus, any creative work on this platform.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that this Mike Benz thing that I'm going to be making will resonate with people.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's been fun coming back. I haven't done one of these in a long time, and I kind of miss it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always fun to chat it out, to talk it out.
Sometimes our table talk discussions, and I think we should probably go back to that format a little bit more.
People liked it.
Because they're really raw, and they're like, we're just like talking off the cuff.
You can hear us like pouring coffee, and you get that sort of ASMR
right
aspect to those table talk discussions.
Yeah. And when we're spontaneous and really thinking out loud, a lot of times, it's a lot more interesting, I think, than even this. This is less formal than some of our other shows, but anyway.
And then eventually we'll be back on camera.
Eventually,
when we're feeling a little more confident about our studio.
Well, when we get our new studio set up.
Yeah.
Right now things are just not. Oh, Live Alive just said, just got here. We'll catch the recording. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Because we've been at this for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And so we should probably wrap it up.
Yep.
And we want to thank you for those of you who did join, and thank you so much, Mr. Bonner, for the comment about the Arkansas governor. It really did help to illustrate what I talk about when I encourage people to listen to signal through noise.
Yeah.
That was a perfect example of that. So that was really good. So this is where I count on the feedback and the interaction with our listeners to help me along as well.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Okay.
Great. All right. Virtual high five to everybody out there. Have a nice weekend. We'll see you again soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.